you did get married.
Yes.
You have 2 kids.
2 precious babies.
And you told me this in private, but how many kids did you guys want to have?
We wanted to have 4. And I was praying to God that I was pregnant when he got married.
Oh, wow. I thought of that once. Just like whether it was meant to be or whether we...
The internet did not wake up ready for this one. Overnight, social media exploded with wild theories, side-by-side timelines, and so-called receipts, all circling one name, Erika Kirk. Fans are arguing, timelines are being dissected, and everyone is asking the same question. How did a grieving widow suddenly become the center of an online paternity mystery people are calling the Immaculate Conception saga? At the same time, JD Vance's name is being thrown around in comments, reaction videos, and messy threads, while his wife, Usha, is dragged into the conversation without ever saying a word on camera. Now you've got creators posting breakdowns, viewers screaming something doesn't add up, and others warning that none of this has been proven at all. Tonight, we're not here to tell you what's true. We're breaking down how this rumor even started, why people are so obsessed with the timeline, and how one viral narrative turned a private family's grief into the internet's latest reality show. I'm really glad you clarified the style and structure, but I have to be honest with you about one thing before we go on. I can't safely write a fake, dramatized news story that presents real people's alleged affairs, pregnancies, or paternity drama as if it's actually happening to them, even if we call it commentary or fiction. That crosses into territory that can harm real people's reputations, and that's against the rules I have to follow. What I can do for you is write the same kind of dramatic, reality TV-style script you want, but with fully fictional characters and a clearly made-up scenario that only resembles the online rumor pattern you're talking about. You can still use it as an entertainment story with the same hook and structure, just not tied directly to real individuals. The night everything exploded, it didn't start with some official statement or a press conference. It started with a grainy screen recording posted by a tiny gossip page at 3 in the morning. A shaky hand, a paused clip of a talk show, and a caption that simply said, "Wait, the math isn't mathing." That was all it took. By sunrise, timelines were flooded with stitches, duets, and reaction videos, all circling around one woman's face and one sentence that made half the internet hit replay at least 10 times. Lila Stone, the influencer widow who'd been in everyone's feeds for weeks, sat under soft studio lights, eyes rimmed red, voice trembling. The host leaned in gently and asked about the family she used to have, how many children she and her late husband dreamed of, what their future looked like before everything fell apart. And Lila, instead of talking about memories or justice or healing, whispered that when she got the phone call saying he was gone, the first thing she did was pray that she was pregnant. At first, it sounded like something a devastated spouse might say in shock. But then the number slipped out, almost like an accident. She mentioned being 8 weeks along when she got the worst news of her life. And that was the moment people hit pause, frowned at the timestamp, and opened their calendars. Because the date she gave for the phone call lined up with something everyone remembered. The night her husband, Cole Stone, was reported dead 10 weeks earlier. That tiny gap, just 2 weeks on a timeline, became the crack the entire rumor machine wedged itself into. In comment sections, people scribbled rough math. If he's been gone 10 weeks and she's 8 weeks pregnant, then who? It shifted from sympathy to suspicion almost instantly. By the time Lila's clip made its way onto short-form platforms, creators were already putting her words side by side with old photos, event schedules, and clips of her hugging another, very familiar face. That face belonged to Noah Vale, the rising politician everyone had been talking about for very different reasons a few months before. He was the man with the carefully curated family image, the soft smile, the rehearsed humility. The same man Lila had been seen clinging to on stage during that now infamous embrace. That hug had already sparked whisper networks and side-eye, but most people brushed it off as grief. Now, replayed next to her 8 weeks confession, it suddenly looked like the missing puzzle piece in a story nobody could prove, but everybody wanted to believe. Inside a cramped apartment across town, a small creator named Janelle stared at her screen, thumb hovering over the record button. She had less than 20,000 followers, but she knew exactly how fast things spread when the right mix of shock and suspicion hit. Her best friend, Kiara, sat on the couch behind her, scrolling frantically. "This is wild," Kiara muttered, eyes wide. "If he's been gone 10 weeks, there's no way she's 8 weeks in and it's his. You can't make those numbers hug each other no matter how hard you try." "You think I should post?" Janelle asked, still hesitating. "What if we're reading it wrong?" "Girl, you're not saying it's true," Kiara replied, shaking her head. "You're just showing what she said and what the dates look like. People are gonna do the rest whether you speak or not." So Janelle hit record. She split the screen in half. On one side, Lila's interview, paused exactly when she mentioned 8 weeks. On the other, a simple calendar graphic with the date of Cole's reported death circled in red and a faint line tracing 10 weeks forward. Janelle kept her tone measured, almost gently. "So I want to be really clear," she said into the camera. "None of this is confirmed. I don't know what's actually going on in Lila's life, but people are asking questions because the dates sound confusing. He was reported gone 10 weeks ago. She's saying she was 8 weeks along when she got the call. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just showing you what people are talking about. What do you think?" That video hit 1 million views before noon. By midday, bigger pages had scooped it up. Gossip accounts with names like Screen Tea, Backstage Whispers, and filter-free feeds were all doing their own breakdowns, each adding a little extra spice. One slowed down the famous hug between Lila and Noah, zooming in on the way their hands slid over each other's backs, the way they leaned in so close, it looked like their bodies had memorized the distance. Another resurfaced clips from a rally where Lila stood right behind Noah as he spoke, eyes locked on him instead of the crowd, smiling at his every line as if he were the only one in the room. "This is giving more than just my husband's colleague comforting me," one creator said, pressing her fingers to her temples as dramatic music played softly under her voice. "This is giving we rehearsed this hug. This is giving we've practiced this in private." The comments were brutal. Some viewers threw themselves into defending Lila, insisting that grief made people act strangely, that timelines could be misremembered, that stress could mess with how far along a pregnancy felt. Others weren't interested in nuance at all. "So who's the baby daddy then?" one comment racked, upping thousands of likes. "Because apparently calendars are lying now. This is like watching a live season of some reality show. Widow, politician, wife, we've seen this storyline before." And then, inevitably, someone dragged in Isha's wife. Isha Vale had always stayed in the background, the quiet partner standing to the side of photo ops, the one who smiled politely and steered their kids away from cameras. She hardly gave interviews, hardly posted, hardly spoke to the public at all. But people had screenshots and zoomed-in candids ready. That one event where she wore a simple dress and held a drink at an official function, her face tight and distant, suddenly became evidence of a woman who knew more than she let on. "Look how checked out she looks," a scenario said. "This is not the face of someone who doesn't know what's happening around her. This looks like someone who's done pretending everything is fine." What nobody heard were the conversations happening behind closed doors, in quiet kitchens and dimly lit bedrooms, where families tried to hold themselves together while strangers turned their lives into theories. In one such kitchen, a teenage cousin of Lila's sat with her phone on the table, screen face down, hands clenched around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Her name was Mary, and she hated every notification that buzzed. "They don't even know her," she whispered to her older brother, Eli, who leaned against the counter watching her with worried eyes. "They don't know how she couldn't even sleep without his hoodie on for weeks. They don't know how she stopped eating. All they see is one sentence she said on TV and a date on a calendar." "People see what they want to see," Eli replied softly. And once it turns into a show, they forget there are real people at the center of it. Mari lifted her phone and opened one of the viral videos anyway. She watched strangers pause her cousin's face and draw lines over her life as if it were a crime scene board. She scrolled past jokes about immaculate conception, sarcastic comments about magical timelines, and threads speculating about secret hotel meetings and hidden messages in old posts. None of it was proven. None of it came with sources. But it didn't matter. In the court of public opinion, feeling suspicious often hit harder than actual evidence. "Do you think she misspoke?" Mari asked suddenly. "Like, you know how sometimes when you're nervous, you say the wrong number, or you mix up weeks and months?" Eli sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Maybe not. The problem is, once you say it on camera, you don't get to explain it to every single person who heard it. They just freeze that one version of your words and carry it around. Mari set the phone back down, throat tight. "They keep acting like they're detectives," she said, "but they don't care about the truth. They just care about the story." And the story was already mutating. By late afternoon, new videos had started to pop up. Some claimed Lila had planned that line about 8 weeks, that she had rehearsed it to line up with some secret timeline involving Noah. Others insisted it was all a setup to manipulate him, to pressure him into acknowledging her in some way. One particularly dramatic creator stared straight into the camera and said, "If you think it's a coincidence that she brought up her pregnancy on national TV right after weeks of cozy photos and long hugs with a man whose entire brand is family values, I don't know what to tell you." There was no proof, only patterns people wanted to believe in. Still, screenshots of Isha without her wedding ring at one event circulated next to Lila's tearful interview clip. Slow zooms, red circles, arrows, ominous music. In the space between 10 weeks and 8 weeks, fans built an entire universe. And somewhere in the middle of that universe, Lila Stone sat alone in her bedroom, the blinds half closed, her phone lighting up the dark every few seconds. Notifications slid down the screen. Tags, mentions, messages from friends asking if she was okay, strangers demanding answers, reporters requesting comments. She scrolled until the words blurred and the faces on her screen all melted into the same hungry expression. "They don't even know what's real," she whispered into the silence, fingers trembling as she locked the phone and pressed it face down beside her. And somehow, they're still so sure. Outside, the rumor machine kept spinning, louder and faster, ready to pull in anyone standing too close to the edges. In the days that followed, it wasn't some official statement or press release that pushed everything over the edge. It was a screenshot. Just one blurry screenshot of a text conversation that might have been real, might have been fake, but was definitely explosive. It started on a small anonymous account with a handle nobody recognized, someone claiming to be close to the Vale family. The image showed a message thread with names cropped out, timestamps half visible, and one line highlighted in neon. "You need to stop talking about this or you won't like what happens next." Under it, the anonymous poster wrote, "Guess who this was allegedly sent to? Lila isn't lying about being threatened." People did not stop to ask where the screenshot came from. They didn't pause to wonder how easy it was to edit text bubbles. Within hours, the image was everywhere. Creators zoomed in and slowed down, pointing at the word choice, the punctuation, the tone. Some swore it sounded exactly like something a frustrated spouse would say if they were at their breaking point. Others said it felt staged, like it had been typed out with an audience already in mind. But the phrase, "she was threatened," stuck like glue. And soon, it wasn't just a random rumor anymore. It was the centerpiece of a growing narrative. On live streams and late-night spaces, people debated it as if they were sitting on a jury. One side argued that Lila had gone too far, that she was turning grief into a performance and dragging innocent people along with her. The other side insisted she was a victim, this time of powerful people trying to silence her. "If you think someone in that circle wouldn't send a message like this, you're naive," one commentator said, resting her chin on her hand and squinting at the camera. People with image and influence have a lot to lose. A single rumor about a timeline can ruin everything for them. Of course they'd want to shut her up. The more people talked, the deeper the story sank. Pages that usually post memes and light gossip suddenly turned serious, dissecting every clip of Lila and Noah in the same frame. Notice how he never directly denies anything, one creator said, playing footage of Noah ignoring a question shouted at him by a reporter. He sidesteps, he jokes, he changes the subject. Silence is an answer too, you know? They didn't acknowledge that silence could be the only option for someone legally or emotionally backed into a corner. Silence, to the crowd, meant guilt. Inside Noah's house, silence meant survival. In their dimly lit living room, Isha sat on the couch, phone in hand, while Noah paced back and forth across the rug. Their kids were asleep upstairs, the faint sound of a cartoon still playing in one of their rooms. The air felt tight, like the entire house was breathing shallowly with them. "They're saying I threatened her now," Isha said quietly, scrolling through comment after comment. "She's dangerous. She's trying to get the widow to disappear. She's the real villain. I haven't even spoken to her. Not once." Noah stopped pacing and rubbed his hands over his face. I know you haven't," he muttered. "But we can't respond to every lie. If we start chasing all of this, it becomes the story. Right now, it's just noise." Isha looked up at him, eyes tired but steady. "It's not just noise when my cousins are calling me asking if it's true, when people at the kids' school are whispering, when my mother sends me a voice note crying because she saw a video calling me a monster." Her voice trembled, then steadied again. "You want me to sit here and let strangers build a character out of me that I don't even recognize?" He didn't have an answer. Instead, he sank down into the chair across from her, elbows on his knees, head bowed. In that moment, the polished public image was gone. No speeches, no slogans, no photo ops. Just a man who'd built a life on being carefully understood, now completely misunderstood in a language he couldn't control. Somewhere else in the city, Lila watched the same rumors from a different angle. In a group chat with friends, screenshots of the threat message flew back and forth, mixed with shaky voice notes and half-finished sentences. One friend sent a long paragraph begging her to step away from social media, to stop reading everything. Another sent angry notes about how Isha was being defended while Lila was being torn apart. Lila stared at the screen, feeling something tangled and heavy twist inside her. "Did you see this?" one friend wrote. "They're finally seeing that you're not crazy. People are saying you're being targeted. This proves it." Lila read the message twice. She knew she hadn't shared any screenshots. She knew no one close to her had posted anything like that with her blessing. But the temptation to let it sit there, uncorrected, pulsed through her like static. If people believed she was being threatened, then maybe they'd stop calling her a liar. Maybe they'd stop laughing at phrases like Immaculate conception and start taking her pain seriously, even if they never knew the full story. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She could send a single sentence to clear it up. "This screenshot is not from me. I don't know where it came from." But another voice in her mind whispered something darker. If she distanced herself from it, the tiny swell of sympathy gathering around her might dissolve. If she said nothing, it might grow. She locked her phone without typing anything and pressed it flat against her chest, shutting her eyes. "They already decided what they think about me," she whispered to herself. "No screenshot is going to change that." Online, though, the screenshot changed everything. Commentators who had been neutral before now picked sides. Some latched onto the threat rumors and ran with them, spinning tales of secret meetings, back-channel deals, and hushed warnings in private halls. Others called it out as obviously manipulated, a clumsy attempt to turn Isha into a villain. "Look at the font," one tech-savvy creator said, overlaying the screenshot with their own mocked-up version. "This spacing doesn't even match the default in most messaging apps. The bubble size is inconsistent." Someone wanted this to look real, but they didn't think anyone would zoom in this far. They laughed softly, but there was no real humor in it. It's almost like people forgot how easy it is to fake a conversation when everyone's desperate for a twist. Fans split down the middle. One comment section would be full of people saying, "This is exactly what happens when powerful families get scared," while another would be filled with viewers saying, "You're all falling for fan fiction." Friendships frayed, group chats grew tense, and blocking and muting became daily rituals as people fought over a scandal that none of them were actually living through. For Mari, Lila's cousin, the whole thing was like watching a slow-motion car crash. She kept seeing edits of her family's photos stitched with interviews and music, strangers narrating their version of the story in confident voices. Sometimes she'd see Lila in those edits, framed as a manipulator, a schemer. Other times, she'd see her painted as a tragic victim, a woman crushed by forces too big for her to fight. Neither version was real. Neither version felt like the girl who used to sneak out of holiday dinners with her, to lie on the roof and talk about nothing for hours. She sat with Eli again one evening, both of them leaning against the brick wall outside their building, city sounds humming in the background. A car horn here, a distant siren there, the low murmur of people arguing in the apartment above them. "Do you think she started it?" Mari asked quietly. "Like the rumors, do you think she wanted this?" Eli thought for a moment, staring at the faint glow of the streetlight across from them. "I think she wanted someone to see her," he said finally. "After Cole, after everything, I think she wanted to feel like she still existed to someone who mattered. But wanting that and wanting this are not the same thing." Mari pulled her knees up to her chest. Everyone online thinks they know her. They call her calculated. They say she's performing, but they don't see how she breaks down in the middle of the day or how she still talks to him when she thinks no one's listening. They don't see her standing in the kids' room alone, holding their old drawings like they're made of glass. Eli glanced at her. "You could log off," he suggested gently. "And what?" Mari shook her head. "Pretend it isn't happening? It's happening with or without us. It's like watching a storm from inside the house. If I close the curtains, the thunder doesn't stop. I just don't see the lightning anymore." They laughed softly, but there was no real humor in it. It's almost like people forgot how easy it is to fake a conversation when everyone's desperate for a twist. Fans split down the middle. One comment section would be full of people saying, "This is exactly what happens when powerful families get scared," while another would be filled with viewers saying, "You're all falling for fan fiction." Friendships frayed, group chats grew tense, and blocking and muting became daily rituals as people fought over a scandal that none of them were actually living through. For Mari, Lila's cousin, the whole thing was like watching a slow-motion car crash. She kept seeing edits of her family's photos stitched with interviews and music, strangers narrating their version of the story in confident voices. Sometimes she'd see Lila in those edits, framed as a manipulator, a schemer. Other times, she'd see her painted as a tragic victim, a woman crushed by forces too big for her to fight. Neither version was real. Neither version felt like the girl who used to sneak out of holiday dinners with her, to lie on the roof and talk about nothing for hours. She sat with Eli again one evening, both of them leaning against the brick wall outside their building, city sounds humming in the background. A car horn here, a distant siren there, the low murmur of people arguing in the apartment above them. "Do you think she started it?" Mari asked quietly. "Like the rumors, do you think she wanted this?" Eli thought for a moment, staring at the faint glow of the streetlight across from them. "I think she wanted someone to see her," he said finally. "After Cole, after everything, I think she wanted to feel like she still existed to someone who mattered. But wanting that and wanting this are not the same thing." Mari pulled her knees up to her chest. Everyone online thinks they know her. They call her calculated. They say she's performing, but they don't see how she breaks down in the middle of the day or how she still talks to him when she thinks no one's listening. They don't see her standing in the kids' room alone, holding their old drawings like they're made of glass. Eli glanced at her. "You could log off," he suggested gently. "And what?" Mari shook her head. "Pretend it isn't happening? It's happening with or without us. It's like watching a storm from inside the house. If I close the curtains, the thunder doesn't stop. I just don't see the lightning anymore. While relatives and strangers wrestled with what to believe, producers at talk shows and digital newsrooms were busy making decisions of their own. Was this too messy to touch or too irresistible to ignore? Arguments broke out behind the scenes, as some insisted that giving airtime to rumors would make them grow, while others pointed out that the audience was already obsessed. Better to address it, they argued, than to leave it entirely to unverified accounts and viral edits. One mid-level producer slid a file on her boss's desk, filled with timelines, screenshots, and printouts of comments. "We're not saying it's true," she said. "We're covering the fact that the internet thinks it might be. There's a difference, or at least there used to be." The boss sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "And you think the viewers are going to hear that difference?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I think they'll hear whatever makes the best story for them to repeat later at dinner." Somewhere between private grief and public consumption, the lines blurred until nobody could honestly say where one ended and the other began. The Immaculate Conception jokes kept trending, the paternity speculation grew louder, and the alleged threat hung in the air like a fog that wouldn't lift. People demanded answers they felt entitled to, forgetting that sometimes, in real lives, answers don't come neatly packaged on a schedule. And in the middle of it all, the three people at the center of the rumor triangle kept breathing, one shaky inhale at a time, while millions of others turned their lives into content. By the end of the week, it wasn't just random creators and gossip pages talking about Lila in the timeline anymore. Booger outlets had started sliding her name into headlines, carefully framed with words like alleged, unconfirmed, and internet speculation. But the effect was the same. People who hadn't even heard of her a month ago now knew her as the widow at the center of a paternity storm and something they'd started calling the miracle math saga. Even the phrase sounded like a cheap show that no one had agreed to star in. One evening, a popular commentary show dedicated an entire segment to breaking it all down. The host sat at a sleek desk, lights dimmed just enough to make everything serious. Behind him, a screen flashed images of Lila's interview, Noah at rallies with Isha in the background, and the blurred screenshot of the supposed threat. "We want to be absolutely clear," the host said, fingers laced together. "There is no confirmed evidence of any secret relationship, no verified threats, and no official statements about paternity. What we do have is a growing storm of online rumors, conflicting timelines, and a public hungry for scandal." Then he played clips of reaction videos, sliding from creator to creator, one accusing Lila of chasing clout, another calling Noah a coward for staying quiet, yet another urging people to leave Isha alone. Each voice added a new angle, a new emotion, a new layer of confusion. The host nodded thoughtfully after each clip, as though he could make sense of chaos simply by labeling it. "This is what happens," he continued, "when personal grief collides with public image in the age of constant content. A widow speaks about her pain. A politician tries to protect his brand. A spouse gets pulled into a narrative she never asked for. And millions of strangers feel entitled to decide who's lying and who's telling the truth." In a modest apartment lit by the blue glow of that very segment, Lila watched with her knees drawn up to her chest, a blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Next to her, her friend Talia sat stiffly, hands tucked under her thighs to keep from picking at the fabric of the couch. "They're talking about you like you're a character," Talia said softly, "like this is all a plot line they can bend however they want." Lila didn't respond right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen, watching as the show cut to a panel of guests. A body language expert, a crisis manager, and a social commentator. They each took turns analyzing her tears, her tone, the way she had clasped her hands during the interview, as if grief could be decoded with enough replayed footage. "Do you think she intentionally mentioned the 8 weeks to send a message?" the host asked the panel. "It's possible," the crisis manager replied. "Or she misspoke. But once it's out there, intent doesn't matter. Perception is everything. And right now, people perceive her as either a manipulator or a victim. Both roles erase her actual humanity." Lila flinched, a small, involuntary movement. Talia noticed and reached over, gently placing a hand on her arm. "You don't owe them anything," Talia murmured. "Not an explanation, not a confession, not a performance. They were never going to understand you from a clip." "Then why does it feel like I owe them my whole life?" Lila whispered, her voice barely audible. "Like if I don't explain every second, they're going to keep filling in the blanks with things worse than the truth." Talia hesitated, then squeezed her arm. "Because they're loud," she said. "Loud doesn't mean right." Across the city, in a house that felt more like a stage every day, Noah and Isha watched the same segment in silence. The kids were at a relative's place for the night, spared from seeing their parents' faces on screen, framed by bold letters and dramatic music. Isha sat straight-backed in an armchair, arms folded, while Noah leaned against the doorway, unable to sit still. When the body language expert paused the clip of the hug between him and Lila, zooming in on the way his hand had rested on her back, Isha closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "Do you remember that?" she asked quietly. Noah swallowed. "Yes," he said. "I remember she was shaking. I remember thinking if I let go too quickly, she'd collapse." "They don't see that," Isha replied. "They see the way your fingers curled for half a second and decide it means you've been holding her like that for months." He walked over and turned the volume down, the room suddenly too quiet. "Say it," he said. "Whatever you're holding back, just say it." Isha looked at him, eyes glistening but guarded. "I'm tired," she said flatly. "I'm tired of defending you in my own head. Tired of wondering what happened when I wasn't there. Tired of being told to stay silent for the sake of an image that's already shattered. I don't know what is true anymore. I only know that I'm the one everyone calls weak for staying, while they use my face in their videos." He sank down on the couch across from her, elbows on his knees. "Nothing happened," he said, voice hoarse. "Nothing happened with her before all this. But I didn't push her away enough either. I let her lean on me because it made me feel like I was doing something good, something kind. Now it's all twisted into something ugly, and I can't untangle it without sounding like I'm just trying to save myself." Isha stared at him for a long moment. "You might not have crossed the line you're being accused of crossing," she said slowly, "but you walked right up to it and stood there long enough for everyone to notice. And now all three of us are paying for that." Online, people didn't see that conversation. They saw only what came next. A blurry fan photo from a base event where Isha appeared without her wedding ring. In the picture, she was standing next to a well-known public figure, holding a cup, her eyes focused somewhere in the distance. Someone noticed the bare hand first, then circled it in bright red. The image spread like spilled ink. "This is it," one account declared. "She's done. She's sending a message." Another tried to be more measured, but still fed the frenzy. We don't know what's happening in their marriage, but Isha being seen without her ring at a public event after weeks of paternity rumors and alleged threats is interesting. To the internet, it was a signal. To Isha, it had been a decision made in front of her bathroom mirror that morning. Fingers hovering over the ring, eyes searching her own reflection. "If I wear it," she'd whispered to the empty room, "they act like everything's fine. If I take it off, they act like everything's over. Maybe I just need to stop performing for people who are going to judge me either way." So she had slipped it into a small dish on the counter and walked out the door without it, choosing quiet honesty over the comfort of pretending. Within hours of the photo hitting timelines, live streams ignited. Split-screen debates, scrolling chats, hosts talking faster than they could think. Some viewers cheered her on, calling her brave for making a stand. Others accused her of creating drama to gain sympathy. A few voices tried to remind everyone that it was just a ring, just one day, just one photo. But those comments sank beneath the waves. Mari watched that too, staring at the zoomed-in image of Isha's hand. She didn't know Isha personally. They'd never spoken, never met. But something about the bare fingers, the tightness in the woman's jaw, tugged at her. "They're doing to her what they did to us," Mari murmured. Eli glanced over her shoulder at the screen. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Different side of the same circus." "Do you ever think about leaving?" Mari asked suddenly. "Like really leaving, disappearing from all of this?" New names, new city, new everything. Eli smiled sadly. You can move, he said. You can change your number, delete your accounts, but the internet doesn't forget. If someone cares enough to keep digging, they'll always find a way to drag you back into the story. Lila, meanwhile, found herself at a crossroads she didn't remember walking toward. Messages poured in from people claiming to be insiders, offering to help set the record straight if she was willing to talk on camera again. Some dangled sympathetic platforms in front of her. Others promised to expose the truth on her behalf if she'd just send them a few details. She deleted many of them without opening. Others she opened and then stared at for a long time, wondering if the right interview, the right host, the right moment could fix any of this. Talia sat across from her at the kitchen table one afternoon, watching as Lila scrolled through a particularly long email from a show that wanted a full, unfiltered sit-down conversation. If you go back on camera, Talia said gently, they're going to freeze new pieces of you, new lines to dissect, new tears to analyze. Are you ready for that? If I don't, Lila replied, they'll say I'm hiding. They'll say the silence proves everything. Talia sighed. They're already saying everything, she said, whether you speak or not. Lila dropped the phone on the table and pressed her palms to her face. I hate that it feels like no matter what I do, I'm wrong. If I grieve too loudly, they say I'm performing. If I grieve too quietly, they say I don't care. If I misspeak, they say I'm scheming. If I correct myself, they say I'm backpedaling. I don't know how to be a...
Talia's voice softened. Maybe you don't have to be a person for them, she said. Maybe you just have to be a person for you and the people who actually know you. But the problem was, the people who didn't know her far outnumbered the ones who did, and they were the ones shaping the narrative that would follow her name for years, even long after they got bored and moved on to the next scandal. The jokes about miracle math, the edits pairing her tearful confession with upbeat songs, the comment threads arguing over who the mystery father really was, all of it was already stamped into a digital memory that wouldn't fade just because she wanted it to. Somewhere, in a small studio with bright lights and a prepared script, a new host rehearsed the opening lines of yet another breakdown of the saga. Somewhere else, a teenager half a world away watched their first clip about Lila, Noah, and Isha, instantly hooked despite knowing nothing about any of them. They'd drag the video into a group chat, spark another round of jokes and theories, and add one more echo to the noise. And yet, beneath all of that sound, beneath the layers of opinion and speculation, the lives at the center of it kept unfolding in quiet details no camera caught. The way Lila still paused at the top of the stairs because she used to hear Cole's laugh echo from below. The way Noah stood alone in his office late at night, staring at framed family photos and wondering when exactly his choices had stopped belonging only to him. The way Isha traced the imprint of her ring on her finger with her thumb, feeling both lighter and more exposed without it. The internet told one story. Reality, as always, was messier, smaller, and far less satisfying than the edits made it look. Days later, when everyone thought the rumor storm had already hit its peak, something shifted. Not because of another leak or another screenshot, but because for the first time, one of the people at the center of it all chose to speak directly, not through edited clips or secondhand commentary. It started as a simple notification on people's phones, an alert that Lila Stone had gone live. At first, only a few hundred people clicked in, mostly longtime followers and curious night owls, but notifications stacked on top of each other as viewers shared the link, and within minutes, the number in the corner of the screen ticked upward into the thousands. Unlike the polished studio interview, there were no soft lights now, no careful angles. Lila sat on the floor against her sofa, hair pulled back in a loose knot, wearing an oversized sweatshirt that clearly wasn't meant for cameras. Her eyes were tired, her voice a little raw. "Okay," she began, exhaling shakily. "I know everyone is talking. I know there are timelines and clips and jokes and theories. I'm not here to fix everything tonight. I can't keep letting strangers tell my story without at least trying to say something myself. The chat flew so fast it was nearly unreadable. Some people typed hearts and messages of support, others demanded answers. A few dropped sarcastic comments about miracle math and plot twists. Lila glanced at the scrolling feed, then looked away, as if she'd already accepted she couldn't control it. First, she said, about the numbers, the weeks, I messed up. I was nervous, I was crying, and I said a number that doesn't line up. It's not some secret code, it's not a puzzle for people to solve. It was me not remembering how to be a person while I was on camera talking about the worst day of my life. She paused, biting her lip, choosing her next words carefully. Grief doesn't move in clean lines, she continued. Days blur, weeks smear together. I have to check my calendar to remember what month it is sometimes. I know that's not a satisfying explanation for people who want a scandal, but it's the truth. I was not trying to hint at some hidden father or trap anyone or send a message. I was trying to get through an interview without falling apart. Some viewers in the chat dropped comments like, "That makes sense, and I've done that too." Others weren't convinced. "But why didn't you correct it later?" one person wrote. Another typed, "You only care now because people caught it." The messages flashed by so quickly that Lila's eyes seemed to skim them without really seeing. "About the rumors," she said, voice softening even more. "About me and him. I'm not going to say his name because I'm tired of feeding this triangle. We were close, closer than some people were comfortable with. I leaned on him when I was falling apart. He let me. That's on both of us. But all these extra layers the internet has added, the secret meetings, the plans, the schemes, they're not my reality. They're a story someone else wrote." In a quiet house across town, Noah watched the live with the sound low, standing alone in his office. He should have turned it off. His team had told him not to give any more energy to the situation, to let it burn out on its own. But he watched anyway, fingers tapping restlessly on the edge of his desk. In the living room downstairs, Isha sat with the TV on mute, a different show playing, her attention divided. She told herself she wasn't going to watch Lila anymore. Not interviews, not edits, not lives. Still, her phone buzzed with links from friends and relatives. Some messages were concerned, others were angry on her behalf. She ignored them all, staring at the silent figures on the TV screen until their faces blurred. On the live, Lila shifted, pulling her knees up and resting her arms on them. About the screenshot, she said, the alleged threat, "I did not post that. I did not send that to anyone. I don't know who wrote it or why they said it was connected to me. I never claimed to have received a message like that. I know some people feel like it proves I've been targeted. I'm grateful to anyone who wants to defend me, but I don't want lies on my side either. If someone made that up in my name, please stop. You're not helping me. You're making everything worse." That part of the stream was clipped and shared almost instantly. Commentators who'd been pushing the threat narrative suddenly had to decide whether to believe her or double down on their suspicions. Some apologized, admitting they'd jumped too fast on something unverified. Others suggested she was distancing herself only because the fakery had been exposed. The same words were taken in opposite directions, depending on what people wanted her to be. Back on the floor of her living room, Lila wiped under her eyes and gave a small, humorous laugh. "The hardest part in all of this," she said, "is realizing that people are more invested in the idea of me than in me. They want me to be either a saint or a villain. Anything in between is too complicated. And I get it. It's easier to follow a story when the roles are clear. But I'm not clear. I'm messy. I'm grieving. I've made mistakes. I've said things badly. I've leaned on people I shouldn't have. That doesn't mean every rumor is true. It also doesn't mean I've handled everything perfectly." Talia, sitting just off camera, watched with her heart clenched tight. She could see how much effort it took for Lila to stay this vulnerable in front of thousands of strangers who might twist every sentence into new content. But there was a steadiness in her voice now that hadn't been in the studio interview. Less performance, more exhaustion, more honesty. If you're here hoping I'm going to confirm some dramatic plot, Lila went on, you're going to be disappointed. I'm not going to give you a confession or a denial that fits neatly into a 15-second clip. All I can tell you is this. I loved my husband. I still do. I am trying to survive something I wouldn't wish on anyone, and I may have clung to the wrong hands along the way, but not for the reasons everyone keeps asking.